evening and welcome to News Night. We are live on Joy 99.7 FM here in Accra and Kumasi. We are on Love 99.5 FM and affiliates across Ghana's 16 regions. We are on Twitter Spaces. We are on Facebook, myjoyonline.com. In the next 60 minutes here on News Night. An unlikely farewell on the day Chief Justice Kwesi Enin-Yeboah exits office. Justice administration across the country is set to come to a halt as his staff have declared a nationwide strike over the failure of the government to increase their salaries. But they have some kind words for the exiting Chief Justice.
He's an astute legal practitioner and also a judge. In the realm of civil procedure, only a few people can compare with him.
You could read from the faces of staff that they were so sad when his tenure of office was coming to an end, because he is somebody who has held every staff of the service together.
We'll get to hear from the Ghana Bar Association. We'll hear from JUSAC as CJ Enin-Yeboah retires today. Also tonight, cultivation of marijuana remains an offense in Ghana. Details as Supreme Court affirms its decision that Parliament acted unconstitutionally when it allowed production for medicinal purposes without due process. Also later.
So it covers all the 16 flagship programs, and it's a constant exercise of looking at the efficiency in terms of the spend. How much effectiveness are you achieving for every cedi you are spending on it? And in terms of the value for money, are you getting every cedi's worth for what you are spending on?
Government says it is already taking the necessary steps to review all existing flagship programs as part of its objectives to strengthen fiscal policy. This follows emerging details from IMF country report. Also, President Akufo-Addo hints at rigorous expenditure rationalization and prudent spending as the government puts strategies in place to meet conditions set by the IMF to assess the second tranche of the bailout in 6 months.
The rationalization of our expenditures, the rationalization of government expenditures is something that we have given the assurance. The domestic revenue mobilization is absolutely critical for us. Already we're beginning to see signs of that.
And in business, government submits new proposals to independent power producers on restructuring debts in the sector.
And in sports, Kete says he's unfazed by individuals seeking to contest him for the GFA presidency, insisting he has lived up to his mandate.
And also in our latest episode of Schools of Shame, we'll tell you how hunger is forcing hundreds of students at the Kmandu Primary School at the Northeast Gonja district of the Savannah region to stay out of school.
After the Easter holidays, when we came back from the house, children have not been coming to school. Tuesday, only one child who came. Today, to only one person who is in.
We are hungry. That is the reason why many of my colleagues are not in school.
We have that and more in this edition of News Night. Please do all to join us with your thoughts and comments. You can send them via WhatsApp is 055-1111-997. If you're listening to us or watching us live on Facebook, you're also listening on Twitter Spaces or myjoyonline.com. You can leave your comments there. I am Emefa Apawu. And tonight, Justice administration across the country is set to suffer as the Judicial Service Staff Association of Ghana, JUSAC, has declared a nationwide strike. They are demanding increase in the salaries of members as they accuse government of neglecting their concerns. So all of this is happening on the day the head of the judiciary, Chief Justice Kwesi Enin-Yeboah, is retiring. JUSAC President Samuel Afote Otu says they will stay away from work until their concerns are addressed.
We are pushing for the president to approve and pay us does not affect only administrative staff of the service. Directors are part, district court magistrates are part, and the second court judges are all part. All these people serving the third arm of government have been subjected to this mistreatment by the government. We have suffered enough. We can no longer bear it. An empty sack cannot stand upright. The National Executive Council of JUSAC, upon consultation with Judicial Service Association of Ghana, JUSLAG, Senior Staff Association, SAGBI, Drivers Association, Finance Staff Association, and all stakeholders, who by this declaration of strike, all staff of the service are immediately directed not to report to work from today onwards.
Well, so that's Abdullahi Yakubu. That's the JUSAC General Secretary there. He will join. No, that's unfortunately, sorry, that's JUSAC President Samuel Afute Otu there speaking earlier at that press conference. We are hoping to be joined on the phone by JUSAC General Secretary Abdullahi Yakubu, giving us further details on this. We'll also be reaching the National Labour Commission. The Executive Secretary will also be joining us on the concerns that have been raised by these workers, that's JUSAC, on their concerns that they've raised on a day that the Chief Justice is exiting office. Well, let me bring in my colleague Joseph Akable. Also, he's been monitoring events in court for us, also monitoring the concerns also raised by JUSAC members a while ago. And he will join us because there are a number of legal issues that he's been following today at the presence of the Supreme Court, and then also this declaration of strike by JUSAC members. We have Blay joining us on the phone. So, Joseph, let's talk about first these concerns that have been raised by JUSAC members. What exactly were the concerns that they put out?
And so they make the point that under the Constitution, the President approves their conditions of service. And so they say that the Judicial Council made recommendations which they expected the President to approve, to have same implemented, but that has not been done. They again make reference to the fact that there are other colleagues in various departments within the public service following the cancellation of the conditions of service of living allowance, the popular COLA that was implemented, 30%. Their colleagues had their salaries adjusted more or less to replace the COLA that had been scrapped. But for them, their salaries remain the same, and they have so far been trying to engage government on the matter, and they have not had any positive response, for which reason they've decided to embark on this particular action. They in fact make the point that the Labour Commissioner tried to intervene, but they attended the meeting, and no government representative attended that meeting except a director at the Ministry of Employment who showed up at the tail end of the meeting, Emefa.
I guess you've been asking them, at least the leadership, about what a farewell this will be for the former boss whom they describe as a Labour-friendly Chief Justice.
In fact, the General Secretary, Abdullahi Yakubu, makes the point that it's unfortunate that this is happening on the day that he is going on strike, because they believe he's someone who had their interests at heart. But that notwithstanding, they believe again that he would understand why they're embarking on this action, because the Labour Commission, per letter that they wrote to them, gave them up until May 24 to engage with government and report to the Commission. And so it is for that reason that they decided on this May 24, since they had not heard from the Labour Commission or heard from government on that matter, then they decided that this is the day that they ought to announce the strike.
Okay. Well, we would interrogate some of these issues and that they are raising shortly, if we're able to raise the National Labour Commission and JUSAC themselves. But let's talk about the general mood on the CJ's last day.
It's been very calm in and around the Supreme Court premises. The Chief Justice wrapped up a lot of his judicial functions yesterday. So today, actually, he did not come into the courtroom. We understand from our sources that he spent the time within the office presence and made the usual goodbyes and getting ready to leave office was what engaged his attention today. But around the court premises and his office complex, there was a sense of, yes, that day that you have an individual going. Unlike other Chief Justice, if you look at the Chief Justice Sofia Kufu, for instance, just before she exited, she opted to use one of the decisions of the court as a valedictory judgment, which was rendered, and afterwards her colleagues took turns to bid her farewell. That did not happen in the case of Chief Justice Kwesi Niniebua.
Okay. Well, we'll talk about his tenure, Joseph. The courts, we know, have really come under some serious criticisms over the period. I'm sure this is something that most of them have been talking about.
Yes, the period of his administration, largely two main issues have come up. So the first one has been the infrastructure development that has been quite significant, which has been a positive for him. I mean, courts have been open across the country, including the Court of Appeal being extended beyond Accra. A number of district and circuit courts have been opened through the assistance of the various municipal and district chief executives. But the other concern has been the perception about the administration of justice and whether the courts have been fair at the very highest level. That is an area where the Chief Justice, for that matter, has come under quite some intense level of criticism. We will know that the NDC, for instance, have been very vocal on this particular issue. There are periods that some persons even went as far as tagging the apex court as an unanimous FC and urging that whoever takes over as next Chief Justice should embark on a move to more or less restore the dignity of the judiciary. But largely within the legal fraternity, a good number of very respected lawyers hold the view that Chief Justice Kwesi Enin-Yeboah was and is a brilliant judge and a brilliant lawyer, and for that matter, who served this country well. In fact, President Akufo-Addo, during a farewell dinner over the weekend, described him as an exceptional Chief Justice.
Okay, stay with me, Joseph. There are other controversial issues and that I would want to tackle with you. You've been following that. We'll hear from the GBA, like the Ghana Bar Association and JUSAC itself. They've been, talking about Chief Justice Kwesi Enin-Yeboah. We'll talk about it shortly, but let's tackle the labor concerns that have been raised by JUSAC. And thankfully, Abdullahi Yakubu, the JUSAC General Secretary, joins us on the line. We are grateful for your time, Mr. Abdullahi. If you can hear me. Hello, good evening. Mr. Abdullahi.
Good evening, Emefa.
Thank you
and
so
good
much.
Evening to staff of the Judicial Service.
Okay, thank you so much for joining us once again. So, on a day that your former boss is leaving office, a man that you've described as a labor-friendly person, what a farewell you're giving him.
I think we are going home with him, only to come back when what he has been doing for us is granted us. Anyway, it was by coincidence that we have to take that hard decision today.
Okay, but I'm sure that you've been hearing from him. What has he been saying? We'll get into the details of the concerns that you're raising, but I'm curious. What has he been telling leadership?
You mean in respect of the salaries?
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, before we got here, we wrote to him to intervene on our behalf, and he has been pushing. As we were working even at the Labour Commission, he was in touch with the railway authorities to grant us what is due us. That's the report that we had officially from him. Unfortunately, that did not yield the results that he desired. So he did his part, and we thank him so much for doing that.
Okay, let me find out to what extent you have engaged government on this matter and to find out what it would take for this action to be called off.
Okay, in terms of engagement with government, after we wrote to the Chief Justice and we're not getting the results, we just try to now, on May Day, show the placards to the president. We met him at the May Day parade in Bolga, showed placards to him, and he saw what we're going through. And behind the back door, we've engaged people in government to see that they could give us the approvals that we're looking for so that we don't get to where we are now. That did not materialize. Then on 5th of May, JUSAC officially wrote to the president himself, stating that this approval of our new salaries should be granted to us. And we gave up to 12 May because after 12 May, Control was going to close their system and wouldn't get it in the month of May. We wanted it in May with all the arrears from January. That was not done for us. On that very day, we wrote to the Labour Commission also asking, informing them of our intention to embark on industrial actions if we do not get the approval by 12th of May. And we copied the Chief of Staff, we copied the Finance Ministry and then the Labour Ministry so that they will know what was happening. Unfortunately, we didn't get any response from government side when that issue became topical and were being discussed on major platforms like Joy FM, Joy News, and other media stations. The Labour Commission did invite us and invited government side to appear on time. We appeared on time, and the government side technically did not appear because we held the meeting up to the later part of the meeting when a deputy director from the Labour Ministry appeared at the time that we had already done with the issue. But we're okay. We said let's give it the benefit of the doubt because of the critical nature of the service we render and its implication of the national. Labour Commission gave us 14 days to resolve the matter and report to the Commission, and directed the Labour Ministry to convene the meeting between JUSAC, the Office of the Chief of Staff, and the Finance Minister, so that we could work on the approval, get the issues resolved, and report outcome to them. The 14 days was actually too much for us, so we asked that they should give us 2 days. They said no. We said, add weekend for this. They said no. We said, then give us only 1 week, because they said they sit on Wednesday. The Commission said and insisted on their 14 days that they wanted to give to us. We had to place the nation's interests, and they said, okay, let's comply with the 14 days. We came home, kept our phones on, kept our office open, expecting that somebody from the other ministries, when they were served with the ruling of the commission, will comply with that, because the commission, when they say they have the powers of a high court judge, unfortunately, the government decided to disregard the directive that came from the commission. So nobody wrote to us to convene any meeting. Nobody called any of us that we should come and hold a meeting to resolve that matter and report. They waited but had time to attend to other issues that were important to them, like elections. Until today, when we were supposed to report to the commission, there wasn't anything to report to the commission because the government did not invite us to any meeting, let alone give us the approval. So we appeared today before the Labour Commission, and the Deputy Labour Minister also appeared and indicated that they were looking for time, and they gave the usual excuses that they will give. And when you monitor how the events had transpired, including the proceedings at the commission, you will understand that there is a deliberate attempt to frustrate GUSAC and to keep the staff of the Judicial Service suffering, even when they could not bear it any longer.
What will be the motive?
So we're compelled to take this hard decision today that will lay off our tools until we get the approval.
Ms. Abdullahi, what will be the motive of anyone to deliberately frustrate your members? What do you think would be the motive?
I wouldn't be able to tell, but for you to be served with a letter notifying you of strike by no less institution than the third arm of government, which handles cases involving people's freedoms, and you decide not to do anything, and for a commission which has the powers of a high court to order you to take steps to resolve the issue, and you don't even have a time to make a phone call or write a letter to engage the parties to resolve this matter. If it is not deliberate, I don't know what it will mean. Even if they say they didn't see the directive from the Labour Ministry at all, a deputy director from the Labour Ministry appeared and heard the directive that was being given, he would have briefed his boss. At the media attention, Joy FM is so big a platform to have discussed an issue, and government will say that they've not heard anything like that. And have you wondered why government hasn't made any public statement over this issue ever since we started over a month ago? If this is not deliberate, I don't know what to call it again.
But Mr. Abdullahi, I'm sure you've considered the times that we're in. I don't know the percentages. Maybe you can refresh our memory in terms of the percentages in salary increments that your members are looking for. But look at the times that we're in. Have we considered that as well?
The one thing about Judicial Service is that we decided that, okay, we're going to be moderate in our demand because we knew what we were going through. However, let's also revert our minds back to this. Judicial Service, our number is not more than 8. We're not up to 10,000 cities. The other public sector, whose numbers are more than 300,000, had a 30% increase in their salary. And I've been enjoying it up to now. The government didn't know that they had an economic issue. For that matter, it should be like they wouldn't grant it to them. It has to be the Judicial Service that has to bear this issue that government is complaining. Besides, if government complains that they are having financial issues, you can see the trend of government expenditure, what they have done at Kuno and other places. You can see what has happened there. So it doesn't have to be the judicial, the third arm of government that should suffer when government claims that they have economic issues.
Okay, but we all know the implications of this action on justice or judicial service delivery, and we know that it's going to come to a halt starting tomorrow. So what would it actually take for this action to be called off?
This is what it will take. If the President of the Republic of Ghana brings us the approval, and we see that approval fully signed by him, and the Finance Minister also commits to forwarding same to the Control Accountant General to pay us the new salaries with all the arrears from January up to the date of approval, we will call off the strike and report to work immediately.
Okay. Well, we're grateful for your time. That's Abdullahi Yakubu, is the JUSAC General Secretary, and we're still working on lines to raise the National Labour Commission on this, or the Employment and Labour Relations Ministry on this matter as well. But we've been talking about the fact that all this is happening on the day the Chief Justice, Kwesi Ningye-Boa, is exiting office. Well, it marks the end of his 3 years in office, which has seen some significant infrastructural development, but serious concerns about the neutrality of the judiciary were also raised under his tenure. The Ghana Bar Association nonetheless says his tenure was largely successful.
So far, it's about the best Chief Justice that has witnessed, under whose reign we have seen a lot of development of courtrooms, to the extent that we even have a permanent court of appeal sitting in Kumasi now, serving the northern sector of the country. And the judges are staying there. Bungalows have been built for them. And not only that, we have high court judges to bungalows improved. So he's done a lot, and we expect that a lot will be done after he's left too.
Do you feel that looking back, he may have some regrets about not necessarily fixing the problem, because the problem is still there?
Oh, I am not sure that you should have any regret, and anybody should have any regret. It's a national issue. You know, you may have ideas, but if resources are not there, what do you do about it? It is not your fault. At least I can say that during his tenure as Chief Justice, a new bill, legal profession bill has been proposed and before Parliament. And if you're talking about law school admissions, I think under his tenure, you can see that there's an increase in enrollment. It doesn't mean that those who acted as Chief Justices in the past didn't do much. It has an infrastructural problem, and it all boils down to money. I heard your reporter talk about the law village. Yes, sword was cut, but where is the money to do the construction? It's still there. I passed there this morning. The project as it is still there. Nothing is happening, all because we lack money. So if funds are made available for expansion of classrooms, lecture theaters, I believe that anybody else who passes to go to law school to do the professional law course will be admitted. If you're saying that he didn't do much, or people say that according to you, he didn't do much, over the people last year alone, about 850 people were called to the bar. That has never happened before. Even mini call that they did just, I think at the beginning of this year, this month, 196 or so were called to the bar. Put together is about 1,000 plus. That has never happened in a legal year. So it can never be true that he didn't do much to open up opportunities for people to be trained as lawyers. That can never be true.
That's Xavier Kuje. He's the head. He's a GBA PRO, the Ghana Bar Association PRO. We can hear from JUSAC themselves. They've been describing him as a labor-friendly Chief Justice. Yes, Abdullah Yakubu.
You could read from the faces of staff that they were so sad when his tenure of office was coming to an end, because he is somebody who has held every staff of the service together. JUSAC decided to give him an honor as the most labor-friendly Chief Justice in the history of the judiciary. In as far as our work is concerned, he is somebody who will not intimidate staff whenever you embark on actions to demand what is due you. He understands that you need to sit together, talk, and then he pushed for issues for staff of the service. So we are going to miss him, so we will continue to be in touch with him, even though he is no longer with the service.
So it means that we are paving the way or preparing for the vetting of Her Lordship Justice Gertrude Tokono. Here's the first Deputy Speaker of Parliament and Chairman of the Appointments Committee, Jose Usu.
The Public Accounts Committee will on Friday, 26th of May, hold a meeting at the meeting room in Parliament, where we usually hold public hearings, to consider the nomination of the Chief Justice to replace the one retiring today. My Lord Justice Gertrude Tokono's nomination was well referred to Parliament when Parliament convened some 2 weeks ago, and on that same day, the nomination was referred to the Appointments Committee. The leadership of the Appointments Committee conferred and agreed that a public hearing to consider the nomination be held on 26th of May. As is the practice, Secretariat of the committee was directed to advertise them in the newspapers of national circulation. Those are the words we use. Newspapers with national circulation. I'm aware that same has been done for 14 days. And as at the close of the nomination, the report I have is that we have not received any petitions or no memo in respect of the nominee. To that extent, the committee will sit in public at 10 a.m. on 26th. The procedure is not different from all the previous considerations of Chief Justices. If you may recall, this would be the third of the Chief Justices nominated by the President, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo. So we will be doing the same thing as we've done in the past. You may also recall that indeed, my Lord Justice Gertrude Tokono was considered by this same committee just around 2 years ago. So she's quite well known to us, we probably will be now interested more about what administrative measures we expect her to be employing to deepen the delivery of justice in the country. I am sure that in all respects it's not going to be different from the two previous ones we have done.
That's the first Deputy Speaker of Parliament, who also doubles as the chairman of the Appointments Committee, Joseph Osei-Wusu there. Well, I'll take you back to the Apex Court. And like I said, there are other issues that came up today, and the cultivation of marijuana remains an offense in Ghana, as the Supreme Court has, in a majority 5-4 decision, affirmed its judgment, which questioned Parliament's decision to allow production for industrial and medicinal purposes. Though portions of the Narcotics Control Commission Act allowed the Minister for Interior to grant licenses for cultivation of weed, a private citizen, Ezwame Manan, took the matter to the Apex Court, insisting that Parliament was not transparent in passing this crucial law. The court in July 2022 upheld this view and struck out that portion of the law, while the Attorney General filed processes asking that the court sets aside its own decision, and we're told that this request was not granted. Joseph Akable is still with me. That's our legal affairs correspondent, spent the whole day at the Apex Court today and still with me on the phone. So, Joseph, we understand that the AG has pointed out that the court is interfering with Parliament's authority to pass laws. Let's talk about it.
And so the AG makes the point that as far as he is concerned, it cannot be the case that when Parliament is considering any bill and it decides to make amendments to that bill, it means that it must pause and allow for a memorandum to be submitted accompanying that specific amendment before it can consider and have that amendment passed. As far as he's concerned, the memorandum that came to Parliament on the Narcotic Control Act, at that time was a bill, provided sufficient indication that the Parliament could make such amendments. And so that was the argument that the Attorney General put before the court, and said that if the court does not set aside its earlier decision, it will mean that there will be some restriction placed on the ability of Parliament to freely make laws as the Constitution has asked it to do.
Well, we know that this view was challenged by the private citizen, Mr. Manan himself. What did his lawyers have to say?
Lead counsel Efiba Emi here made the point that this is not the position of the law, because Article 106, he argued, was quite clear that when a bill is being introduced, the memorandum must spell out in detail what the bill seeks to do. She says nowhere in that document was a hint given at all that Parliament or government intends to push through and allow for the first time the cultivation of marijuana. She argues that they sneaked that particular amendment in at the very tail end of parliamentary proceedings and did not allow much debate. And she believes that such a crucial amendment should have been indicated in the bill. Citizens should have been allowed to participate in the debate, well advertised, before Parliament would have considered it. And so she urged the court not to set aside its own decision, and the court agreed with her.
Well, I'm curious. Run us through which judges formed the majority and which ones were part of the minority.
And so 5-4, the initial decision was also a 4-3-1. So for this 5-4 decision, the 5 comprised Justices Jones Doche, Professor Ashikote, Maria Mousu, Professor Henrietta Mensah Bonsu, and Justice Emmanuel Yoni Kulendi. So they are the 5 that formed the majority. In fact, the only addition to this number is Justice Maria Mousu. She was not part of the initial 4 when it came out as a 4-3 decision. So she joined the other 4 that were already on the original panel to form the majority 5 in this particular extended panel. In terms of the 4 that disagreed, they are Justices Lovelace Johnson, Amadou Tanko, Samuel Esiedu, and George Kumsin. I'm sure you have noticed that the last 2 names are very new judges. The reason being that the original 7-member panel that heard the case, 2 of the judges retired. And so it meant that in addition to adding 2 new judges to enhance the panel for a review, the court also had to replace 2 other judges. So it meant that 4 new judges actually came in, but the positions as returned was 5-4. And so quite a close call, but this is the end of the road in respect of this particular matter in terms of the legal aspect of it in court.
So we have any idea what happens next?
We understand that the government and the AG's office, for that matter, is considering initiating the process entirely again, i.e. an appropriate bill going through to Parliament indicating a desire to have the cultivation of marijuana allowed for medicinal and industrial purposes. And so that is something that is under keen consideration at this point in time.
Okay, thank you very much. That's our legal affairs correspondent, Joseph Akable. They're monitoring events at the Apex Court for us. Let me bring in the president of the Hemp Association of Ghana, Nana Agyemang. Thank you so much for joining us here on Newsnight. I'm sure this is an issue that you've been following all through since it began. Really, I would want to hear your thoughts on what this particular ruling from the Apex Court means for your members.
Well, first of all, hemp evening, Emefa, and hemp evening to all your listeners. Before I get into that, I have to take an issue. Emefa, you're my heartthrob, but trust me, you've just read pure fake news. And your legal chap who was there, pure fake news. This is not about marijuana. This is not about weed. And none of that was a part of the court process today. None of it. We are talking about industrial hemp with a THC level of 0.3%. We are not talking about marijuana, locally called weed. We're not talking about that at all. We're talking about industrial hemp, which we can use for industrial purposes, such as producing hempcrete that can build houses, producing hemp wood that is 20% stronger than the wood we can get at the moment from the trees. We're talking about producing everything plastic, which would be biodegradable. And so when we carelessly throw our plastic into our open gutters, it would biodegrade in 60 days. We're talking about hemp textiles, hemp paper, hemp cosmetics, hemp water. We're not talking about marijuana at all. We're not talking about weed. And unfortunately, all the media houses, you've stuck to this sensationalized line of marijuana and weed. You are misinforming your listeners.
Nana, really, I've been trying to get where you're going with this. Nana, if you could please, I'm trying to get where you're actually going with this. Are you saying that from the very onset, the case that we are dealing with, everything we've been talking about in terms of marijuana has been wrong? The courts got it wrong. Parliament got it wrong. What exactly are you saying?
No, Parliament didn't get it wrong because I worked with Parliament on the Parliamentary Select Committee. I was there when that Section 43 was crafted.
So what should we call it? We shouldn't call it marijuana. What should we call it? Nana, please help me.
All we were talking about were industrial hemp. We were not talking about marijuana. We were not talking about weed. We were talking about industrial hemp for industrial purposes and medicinal purposes. That's what we're talking about. That is what this debate is about. It's nothing to do with we at all. And we just keep misinforming the general public about this issue. I don't know why the media houses, why you can't get it right. I don't know what the problem is.
So we should call it industrial hemp. It shouldn't be marijuana. That's the point you're making.
It is industrial hemp with a THC value of 0.3. It is not the weed that you smoke. It is for industry and it is for medicinal purposes. For example, we have children here who suffer from epilepsy. The CBD oil from industrial hemp can be given to those children and it will totally stop those seizures.
Well, we'll get into the concerns that you're raising, Nana, but what we've been talking about is that the Supreme Court, in that majority 5-4 decision, affirmed its judgment, which questioned Parliament's decision to allow production for industrial and medicinal purposes. You say it's, industrial hemp, but really, this particular ruling from the court today, what does it all mean to you if we call it industrial hemp and instead of marijuana?
Well, what it means to me, and we must call it industrial hemp.
I just did, Nana, so please go to the point.
Yeah, is that what it means is that basically we may have to start the procedure all over again with a bill, or perhaps we will be able to draft the amendment, and in order to get it inserted, we have to follow the due process, which is to gazette it. And that should have taken place in the first instance. It should have been gazetted because it significantly changed the law. Because before that Section 43 was added, there was nowhere in there where it talked about a minister having the due authority to issue licenses for the cultivation, processing, manufacturing, etc., of industrial hemp. So, as it stands right now, the law is still there. The law has not gone anywhere. It's just a particular section. And if we want to address that section, I'm sure there is a process that we can use to reintroduce the amendment, but this time ensure that it doesn't breach the Constitution by gazetting it.
Okay, we're grateful. And that's Nanajiman. He's the president of Hemp Association of Ghana. And that's their concern that he raised. At least we follow this, and we're told, at least legal affairs correspondent tells us that the implications are that, of course, we're going to initiate the process entirely, and we'll be monitoring that and bring that to you. Let's do business now, George. You know about
some interesting education. I think that it's the connotation or whatever, or and the branding, and then what do you call it? The fact that people,
the pH and all that. Okay.
Well, it is very, even the water that we consume, the pH levels. I think that his concern is that when the wording that is used, it connects
like that people are just
on the streets and just do the paper wrapped, just some 5 cities or 10 cities. Oh no, I'm just trying to. So that is what maybe he's concerned with. All these things, there are certain portions that are used for industrial production.
But you know the difference, really.
Even with the very hard drug of cocaine, even there are some medical, use of it and all the rest.
Nobody is doubting that there are, medicinal, uses or for it. But really, if you say marijuana, you say industrial hemp.
I think the one is more sold on the streets, and one is more for industrial and medical purpose, and maybe that's where the argument is, and what he was trying to connote or try to talk about, and how the association has been seeing that this is bad, but there is some good thing about it that to explore. Well, Emefa, coming up in business, we hear from the president, who is optimistic the IMF program will aid in the quick recovery of the economy, and government submits new proposals to independent power producers restructuring debts in the sector. The business news on Newsnight is brought to you by MTN Business. Welcome to the new world of business, Allianz Live and Ghana Pay. You're welcome back to Business on Newsnight. Now, President Akufo-Addo has given the firm assurance that the IMF program will indeed aid in the quick recovery of the economy. Ghana's program secured board approval last week after getting the required financing assurance from some of the country's external creditors. Speaking in engagement at the Qatar Economic Forum today, the president noted that the government is committed to taking the necessary reforms that will put the economy on a strong footing.
We believe that it is going to provide us with a foundation for redirecting the economy, repositioning the Ghanaian economy, firstly, to regain the macro stability that had been lost. Secondly, to be able to have a better control over important data like interest rates, inflation, giving the impetus to private sector development, private sector investment. We're looking at that more than we're looking for assistance from the multilateral development banks, etc. But basically, these are the objectives that we are. At the end of it, of course, hopefully, position the economy of Ghana in such a way that we have a more diversified economy, we have a stronger economy that can withstand the exogenous shocks that we have witnessed in the last 2 or 3 years, and be able, therefore, to stand on our own feet much better in the future than we have.
And that's President Akufo-Addo speaking in an engagement at the Qatar Economic Forum today. Now, government has submitted new proposals to independent power producers on restructuring debts owed players in the sector. That these producers are rich in millions of dollars, and government is making this new submission after the previous one was rejected by the producers. Dr. Mohammed Amin Adam is the Minister of State at the Finance Ministry.
Now the minister has engaged the IPPs and put an offer to them for the restructuring of their debts in line with the general debt restructuring that we are doing. And a number of them have positively responded to our offer. Some have asked for some modification in their power purchase agreements, and so ECG is engaging them on the restructuring of the power purchase agreements, and we should ensure that at the end of this negotiation, the debt levels are reduced so that we can keep current on our invoices. I must also state that the energy sector is a component of the IMF program, but also of the World Bank DPOs. We are not required to accumulate new tariffs in the sector or in other MDA. We are not required. And so to be able to fulfill this condition, it means that we must be able to reduce our debt size in the energy sector. We also must ensure that the restructured debts are paid, but we also must keep current on future invoices that are coming.
Dr. Mohammed Amin Adam is the Minister of State at the Finance Ministry. Now, Tullow Oil is looking forward to an improved turnaround of his operations from the middle of this year. This will be impacted by new oil fields project that will take off from July this year. There is more in the following Business Desk report.
Chief Executive of Tullow Oil, Rahul Dear, in a letter to shareholders, maintained that his optimism is influenced by some new developments that are expected to take off on the Jubilee field from the middle of this year. This is expected to increase the daily production of crude oil from the Jubilee field from about 95,000 to more than 100,000 metric tons. The development of 2 wells in the first half of this year has already brought on board about 17,000 barrels of crude from January to March this year. Tullow Oil was expected to spend about $400 million on capital projects in Ghana. The exploration firm in this update to shareholders maintains that a significant amount of this has been spent already in the Jubilee and 10 fields. Tullow Oil also announced works on the 2 new wells have already been finalized, with 3 more set to be completed in the next half of this year. It also disclosed that it has made some significant progress on submission of an amendment to the plan of development and securing a gas sale agreement by the middle of this year. This Tullow Oil says it will result in a significant bookable gas reserve for sale. On the recent tax issues with government, Tullow Oil insisted that it stands by its decision to file for arbitration with the International Chamber of Commerce in London over some tax assessments done by the Ghana Revenue Authority. It maintained that these are without merit and believes the court will uphold its challenge and concerns.
And that is the Business Desk report. Meanwhile, shareholders at Tullow's annual general meeting in London today approved all the resolutions that were tabled for consideration, including the finances, remuneration for directors, and planned expansion works on the Jubilee field. Now, British Airways is set to launch 3 new daily flights on the Gatwick-Accra-Gatwick route from the end of October this year. The move by the airline is more to offer more options to persons flying on the London-Accra route and also impact on ticket pricing. Moran Bega is British Airways Head of Sales for Africa, Middle East and South Asia.
During the pandemic, we really had to think about what sort of schedules we can operate, and we had to make some reductions. And we've been working really hard to increase those back up. But specifically, it also gave us an opportunity to think about the routes and the areas that we want to grow in. Accra, we've seen, it's been one of those routes that we've been really keen to grow, and we now have the opportunity. So we're really excited by the fact that we're going to have 3 additional flights to Gatwick every single week. So look, we're certainly seeing a lot of demand from Accra. What we're doing over here with launching the Gatwick flights, where the Heathrow flights are still going to operate every single day. The Gatwick flights are an addition to that, so there's more choices, more flexibility, and we're really giving the choice to our customers here in Ghana.
Moran Bege is British Airways Head of Sales for Africa, Middle East and South Asia. And that's all for Business on News Night. And still about the industrial hem and local hem or street hem. Or
there's a difference.
I know there's a difference, but
okay. All right then.
Yeah,
we'll leave it here, George.
industry and local.
Bye-bye, George. We'll get into sports shortly, but government says it is already taking the necessary steps to review all existing flagship programs as part of its objectives to strengthen fiscal policy. Well, this follows emerging details from IMF's May 2023 country report on Ghana, which among other states that one of the key flagship programs, Free Air Chasers, is poorly targeted, and adds that Ghana's education system is producing poor learning outcomes. But Information Minister Kojo Ponkruma says government is already reviewing all 16 flagship programs, including the Free SHS.
I'd like to take you back to the 21st of March 2022, after the Q1 cabinet review. That is when government first announced that all 16 flagship programs were up for review. That announcement was made by myself at a press briefing at the Ministry of Information. And what that means is that we consistently look at these programs on matters of efficiency, effectiveness, and value for money. And where we think necessary cuts can be made, we do so. So, to be honest, this is not the first time that we have made and publicly expressed this intention and this commitment. So it covers all the 16 flagship programs.
Okay.
And it's a constant exercise of looking at the efficiency in terms of the spend. Can you make some savings in terms of the spend? How much effectiveness are you achieving for every CD you are spending on it? And in terms of the value for money, are you getting every CD's worth for what you are spending on? The first 9, may I say, conditions, out of these about nearly 50 reforms that have been agreed with the fund, are the ones that we have to deal with before the end of this fiscal year as part of the reviews.
That's Information Minister Kojo Oponkrema. Let's do sports now, and Ms. Bao is here.
Yes, Emefa. Well, the GFA elections is drawing closer and closer, and President of the Ghana Football Association, Kete Kreku, says he is unfazed by individuals seeking to contest him for the presidency in the association's upcoming elections. Now, Kete, who is seeking the second term, believes his administration has delivered on their mandate and have served to the appreciation of the football stakeholders, and is hopeful they will speak to his favor when the election do happen.
What I know is that I'm blessed to be alive. What I know is that I have the right levels of passion for the sport. What I know is that I appreciate the opportunity that Ghanaians and the football family offered me to serve. This opportunity I will never forget, and I don't take it lightly. What I've said here is that football will speak, and football will speak, just like it spoke in 2019. What I know for a fact is that we have served football to the best of our ability. We were told when we went first to the classroom that there's 24 hours in a day, but football has taught us that there's more than 24 hours in a day, and we have worked more than 24 hours in a day throughout this period from 2019 up to today. And our people in the sport do appreciate our hard work, and we will continue to work until our time is up.
That's President of the Ghana Football Association, Kete Kreku there. And of course, that's it for sports, which was brought to you by Pepsodent Herbal and Chaco. Every smile matters.
Thank you very much, Musbao. I'm wondering where they got the extra 24 hours, the extra hours to add to the 24 hours. But sex for jobs, sexual abuse in the fishing industry and corporate organizations, poor remuneration are among a litany of complaints listed as part of human rights abuses in businesses in Ghana by the Attorney General's Office and the Commission on Human Rights and Administrative Justice, SHRAJ, are spearheading and working with other institutions on the development of the National Action Plan to stem the tide. My colleague Maxo Agbagba was in Takrade for that stakeholder consultation and has come through with this report.
The National Action Plan on Business and Rights has arisen in response to the concerns of the United Nations about the poor human rights provisions and enforcement in businesses and the need for businesses to respect human rights in all their dealings. Some countries have already produced and activated their action plans, while several others are now in the process of doing so. Ghana has already initiated the process to produce a national action plan for promoting human rights in businesses. In an interview with Joy News, the chairperson of the Business and Human Rights National Action Plan Steering Committee, Dr. Sylvia Dusu, said concerns about sexual abuse in the fishing industry and others came up strongly during the SAP group discussions.
In the group that I headed, the people are saying that there's a lot of sexual harassment in the fishing industry, and that young girls especially are being used in the fishing industry as prostitutes because of the poverty, the endemic poverty in this area. And then I can see that the fishermen also complain that the Navy are harassing them on the sea. I think the media has also complained of sexual harassment. And so there's a lot of recommendations have come out on what we should do about it.
Now, out of 275 people's population at the Kpandu Primary School at the Northeast Gonja district of the Savannah region, only 33 come to school regularly. Hunger has driven them out of school. Their parents say the unpredictable rainfall pattern has affected their farming business, so they are unable to provide 3 square meals for their children. In today's edition of Ghana School of Shame, my colleague Jojo Kobna looks at how school feeding impacts class attendance.
All right, you are welcome to Pandu KG Primary Basic School. Here is KG2. My name is Madam Rita Enima. Children have not been coming to school. Tuesday, only one child who came. Today, only one person who is in. Due to poor parental assistance in the community here, most of the children come to school without eating. When ask the parents, they will complain they don't have money to cater for their awards. So now, actually, I'm having the total number of 11 students in the class.
Parents here disagree that they are unwilling to support their children.
Last time, my son needed a coin, but I shouted at him because I had no money. I was annoyed. I yelled. It spoiled my day. How come I could not give my child just a coin? It broke my heart. Some men are even committing suicide. But I won't do that. We don't have money. Times are really hard.
The few children here say they're also hungry and wish they stayed at home.
We are hungry. That is the reason why many of my colleagues are not in school. Other schools have school feeding. I can't force my friends to come to school. I can't give them food. So when I call them and they refuse to come, I can't force them.
Now, an entomologist with the University of Energy and Natural Resources is raising public awareness about the consumption of African palm weevil larvae, also known as akokono in the Akan language. Dr. Jacob Anankwari, the coordinator of the Health Insect Project, says the insect is highly nourishing for the body and has the potential to protect environment because it generates little or no greenhouse gases. Joy News, Mahmoud Mohammed Nuruddin was at the farm in Sunyai and our reports.
So these beans all over here have either the larval or adult stages of the African palm larva, which is traditionally known as akokono in the Akan language.
Dr. Jacob Anankwari, an entomologist and lecturer at the University of Energy and Natural Resources, says the larvae grow between 21 and 28 days before harvesting.
Once these ones hatch and grow up to 21 to 28 days, they are often ready for the market.
It contains 19 of the 21 essential amino acids as well as high levels of protein and iron.
And then whereas the beef has 14 milligrams of calcium, the insect has 88 milligrams. So somebody